Welcome to this 19th Recovering Through Grief Chronicles podcast. Today is October 30th, 2023, and my name is Annie Blue. These podcasts are for educational and entertainment purposes only. As a species, it is important to embrace that we are wired for connection. We wish for connection, and we wait for connection. In his book, Interconnected, Daniel J. Siegel, MD, writes, "As we come into this world wired for connection, we find that with our first breath, we embark on a lifelong quest to feel safe in our bodies, our environments, and in our relationships with others." Another biology of trauma spokesperson, Dr. Amy Apigian, states, "If the touch we received as a young child was not tender, not enough, or did not express support and acceptance, a constant yearning, a skin hunger persists. Confusion in our body arises from the desire to reach out for touch, and yet the bigger fear of rejection can also be present. As vital as touch is, it is not the first experience of development." Graven and Brown wrote in their 2018 publication on fetal hearing development that sound is the first experience of development of the fetus. By the time the fetus is born, the mechanisms for hearing are fully formed. The mother's nipples act as a voice recorder to the baby, constantly playing the voice of the mother. In studies conducted by Ogden and Fisher in 2015, fetal brain development is highly sensitized to stress and unsafety, making the child more prone to anxiety and sensory processing disorder. Divinely intentioned sound helps the body feel safe. As we move further along this trajectory of touch and sound, we then come to gain knowledge of the biology of trauma that is often traceable to the third trimester of pregnancy and the first 6 months of life. Trauma is what didn't happen, and the missing experiences of what should have happened in our life. Ruth Cohn describes it as where the stimulus is greater than what the brain and nervous system are designed to process in the customary way. Trauma likes to run interference with our capacity to take an experience in. It is our body that stores trauma. How is it that trauma gets stored in the body and often seems to not show up in the body until someone is an adult? How do we measure the impact of trauma on the body? Per Dr. Amy, patterns are a supportive trauma measure, as patterns are like footprints. What is the footprint of trauma? Overwhelm, compounded first by panic, then freeze, and then collapse. My guest today opted to not be interviewed due to an omission I made that changed her mind about being interviewed. Working with her, though, prompted some great questions and good information to come forth that I am choosing to share anyway, as it is very pertinent to recovering through grief. The first question I asked this person, I am now addressing to each listener to answer for themselves. Within your safety barometer, please share your earliest recollection of your life of what you would typify as trauma. The second question, per Rose Cohn, there are signature markers that make up a neglect profile. She speaks of hypoarousal, which is inescapable shock and disassociation. One numbs out so they don't feel anything. Infants can't fight or flee if neglect is already on their doorstep. She categorizes the neglect markers as passivity, procrastination, paralysis, helplessness, other directedness where others' needs and wants are the priority, emotional numbness, disorganized disorientation, a dilemma without a solution, and lastly, fierce self-reliance. Within your comfort and safety parameters, please share out loud to yourself or another with you, or through self-journaling within a condensed version of your time capsule, key experiences in your life of neglect and its overwhelming effects on your entire physiology. Please take your time with this, as once you tap this well of remembrance, it may take a while to compile your list. Question 3. There are specific trauma responses called the polyvagal theory that accurately portray the different states that occur with trauma held in the body. This theory was developed by Dr. Stephen Porges. With this framework, one can understand the nervous system's involvement in social behavior, emotional regulation, and stress responses. According to this theory, the autonomic nervous system is not a singular system, but rather a complex interplay between 3 different branches: the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, specifically the ventral vagal complex, and the dorsal vagal complex. Each one of these responses is a different operating system informing the body at a tissue level, organ level, and cellular level how to do what it does. The theory suggests that the ventral vagal pathway is responsible for promoting social engagement and connection, while the sympathetic nervous system is involved in fight or flight responses. On the other hand, the dorsal vagal complex is related to conservation, shutdown responses in times of extreme threat or disconnection. Polyvagal theory also posits that our physiological state influenced by these neural circuits can definitely impact our ability to connect with others and regulate emotions. By understanding the dynamics of the autonomic nervous system, polyvagal theory aims to shed light on various aspects of human behavior, social interactions, and mental health. Using Dr. Amy's example, imagine yourself driving your favorite car, cruising along, listening to your favorite song. How are you driving the car? It's kind of automatic in that mental state and is called ventral vagal. You're not stressed. It's this beautiful drive. You have your foot slightly on the gas pedal. It is a balance of efficiency. You are your best self in this moment, and you are cruising even in the best of health. Suddenly, you realize you are late for an appointment. You press hard on the gas pedal. You become super focused. The music gets turned off. In a stress response like that, you are now burning through the gas. You are burning through your efficiency, knowing you can't sustain this state for long. It is your stress response. It is there to serve you, but not sustainable because you will eventually run out of gas. It's not your healthiest operating state, but it will get you there. When the car runs out of gas, that is a collapse. You are in high stress, and you throw on the emergency brake, so your foot is still on the gas pedal, but you are still in collapse. Does this sound familiar to any of you? Do you have examples of instances in which your life operating system went to collapse, as in this example presented here? Question 4. Sensations must be looked at to measure trauma in the body. The state you are experiencing drives how your tissues, organs, and cells operate in the present moment. Trauma can give rise to a range of physical and emotional sensations. It is important to know that people's experience of trauma can vary greatly, and not all individuals will have the same sensations or reaction. Here are some common sensations associated with trauma according to OpenAI, American Psychological Association, or MLA, Modern Language Association. The first is known as hyperarousal. This refers to an increased state of alertness or vigilance. People may feel constantly on edge, easily startled, or have an exaggerated startle response. They may experience rapid breathing, a racing heart, sweating, and a sense of being keyed up. The second one is hypervigilance. Trauma survivors may have an intense and persistent awareness of their surroundings. They may be constantly scanning for potential threats or danger, making it difficult to relax or feel safe. Flashbacks. These are intrusive and vivid recollections of the traumatic experience. Flashbacks can be intense and may make the person feel as if they are reliving a traumatic experience. This can be accompanied by overwhelming emotions, physical sensations, and a sense of disorientation. I had a friend that I was doing healing work with, and she ended up having bruises show up on her face, and it was related to the flashbacks that she was getting. It actually materialized physically onto her face to remember what she had been through. Number 4, numbing and disassociation. Some individuals may experience a sense of emotional numbness or detachment to cope with the trauma. Disassociation, which involves feeling disconnected from oneself or the surrounding environment, can also be a response to overwhelming experiences. Number 5, physical symptoms. Trauma can manifest in various physical symptoms, including headaches, muscle tension, chronic pain, gastrointestinal issues, fatigue, and sleep disturbances. Those symptoms may be the result of physiological impact on the body. Number 6, emotional fluctuations. Trauma survivors often experience a wide range of intense emotions. These may include fear, anxiety, anger, sadness, shame, guilt, and a sense of hopelessness. Emotional reactions may be unpredictable and may fluctuate between extremes. Are you able to recall how your body felt in one of these following examples? If you can recall, were you in the high energy stress phase, the dorsal vagal freeze? Were you cruising in the parasympathetic, where things seemed copacetic? Or were you stressed and feeling the tinges of threat and anxiety, as in the sympathetic trauma response? Parasympathetic is described as calm, aliveness, curiosity, grounded, connected, the healthiest version of expression of oneself. It is usually preceded by a social engagement trigger to the autonomic nervous system. Do you ever recall witnessing the slightest of trauma responses, where in the moment life just felt so good? The next one, number 6. In the sympathetic state, a threat emerges and you experience anxiety. You become restless, activated, hypervigilant, angry, more aggressive. The hamster wheel is ongoing, and often insomnia is present. Can you share to yourself an example of experiencing this state, or possibly witnessing this trauma response experience with someone close around you during their lifetime? Sometimes, as we begin to comprehend trauma with new eyes, we realize how many surrounding us are wavering in the 3 trauma responses most of the time. The next one, 7. The collapse state is referred to as a freeze state. We are overwhelmed, exhausted, very heavy, severely depressed, and arrive at what is the point thinking. Addiction thrives in an ongoing freeze state. Many will experience chronic fatigue at this point, where the body has run out of gas. Gabor Mate says, the emotions work the same way the immune system works. Both do whatever they think is necessary to protect us, even if that means keeping our emotions locked away within us. Because of the suppression of emotions, self-destructive tendencies prevail. It makes so much sense to be angry because of not getting what is so important. With the major ongoing trauma experiences you have witnessed, do you find after hearing about this that much of your life has possibly been in this freeze state? We can be in freeze states for months and months and months and not realize it. Number 8. So it is also in this freeze state that we encounter outside support that harbors institutional and systematic exploitation. Worker burnout, codependency setups, approval neediness, validation cravings, experiencing being overlooked, minimized, discarded, and abused. The damage of repression and suppression on the body seem to drive and run the operating system most of the time. Trauma creates changes in one's biology. That same biology then keeps one stuck in trauma. Researchers are finding that some humans are also born with a biology that will predispose one to trauma. Have you witnessed any of these deconstructions or destructive tendencies to your nervous system when seeking outside grief support? Sometimes in this frozen state, with too much order, one can gravitate toward chaos because it is what they are used to from always living within their trauma response patterning. Please take care of yourself as you respond to this question. This was intended for the person I was interviewing, but I will proceed with it for your awareness. After this person's son's death, they decided to seek an outside, external, healing self-help community for support. It would have been instructional for this person to elaborate on that community and the sensations that supported this person's choice to leave behind their old life for 2 years and explore this alleged community of integrity and healthy support for healing, which this person's experience was not that it was of integrity and healthy. Number 10, if you have experienced unhealthy influences in a community structure or in your work environment, what was your instinctive response to this healer or leader in charge of this particular community? It may be difficult to remember something like that if you were part of a community like that for a long period of time, but it also is good to truly bring the lens in closer and if you can remember what was the instinctive response, because so often our instincts are right on, and we get things right away, and then we talk ourselves out of them. Number 11, did you experience any therapy tactics weaponized in a manner that supported members of this community into accepting discomfort? Number 12, when someone experiences severe trauma over long periods of time, as has now been addressed in this questioning, reserves can become depleted so that they reach a point of collapse. Collapse in one area has ripple effects. If this is close to any adverse community experience that you witnessed, what was the effect of anyone who questioned the rules of the organization that you were a part of? Number 13, this is a big question. I am reading from a checklist that was put together through Stephen Hassan's work and David Shaw's. Both of them are recovery specialists. And please pay attention and pinpoint any thought processes that you recognize experiencing yourself in any employment, healing, or self-help communities during your life. You may recognize remnants of this in close personal relationships as well. Here we go. Paying tribute, group worship. The premise that you were evolving humanity. The premise that any discomfort you were feeling or experiencing was an area for growth. The premise that none of what you valued were real. None of your values were real. Non-integrated fixations. An extreme construct around a basic understanding of values. So a construct that was just very simple all of a sudden became very complicated in its definition, which didn't quite correlate with how really simple the original construct was. The premise that we humans have ultimate control over our moods and emotions. There is a lot that goes into our moods and emotions, and sometimes it's not always accurate to think that we have the ultimate control. The self-help community was becoming the substitute response to your trauma stimulus response patterns. So it just took the place of your trauma response patterns that you were always residing in. Just a substitute. Turning to the spiritual or self-help community to fill the same inner trauma void. The urge to bolt. Within a couple organizations that I've been involved in, where I've left, the urge to bolt was extreme, a lot. It would come up a lot because of things that I was witnessing, which were completely out of sorts with my belief system. One of the questions in the first community that I'd been a part of was to ask, is what I'm gaining greater than what I'm losing? And that seemed to be the barometer that I utilized, but it was amazing to look back and consider how many times I had the urge to bolt. Word salad, which is defined as a scramble of nonsense words put together with no sequence or meaning. They just sound good, but what is the actual definition and what are they actually saying? The premise that anyone who exposes your deficiency is a master teacher. A point person who could offer any advice and authority to a quote-unquote lower level rank. The proliferation of inductive reasoning, the question being asked, what do you make it mean? The ongoing premise that any reaction is one's own issue. Discussing your progress was a one-way street. What happened if you questioned the feedback? You were feeling cornered. There was a time, like a grace period, allotted to break in and establish oneself when they were new to the community. Helping newbies get over their hesitation to spend money toward the community. Establishing to newbies that you are trustworthy and reliable. This one's a biggie. Leveraged trust. Love bombing, replacing actual family relationships. Dishing out insults, always in the guise of teachings. Insults disguised as questions or constructive criticism. Many of the behaviors listed so far became all too familiar. You often felt or feel humiliated and disrespected. You witnessed yourself changing your behavior to please the other person. The other person, though, showed little or no remorse for their behavior. You found yourself choosing to become isolated from family and friends outside the community. You were being pressured to do things you didn't want to do. Closed loop system of logic. No complaint from a lower level member was valid. No way to give feedback. Isolating and shameful occurrences. Conditioned to dismiss personal judgment and critical discernment. That's a biggie. Unethical persuasion techniques of manipulation and control. Authoritarian leadership patterns. Loyalty and commitment mechanisms. Lifestyle characteristics and conformity patterns, including sanctions to those who deviate. In follow-up, after delving into such a heavy topic, it is uplifting to assess if you agree with the following quote by Dr. Siegel, MD, that deep learning invites an evolution, perhaps a revolution in consciousness. This causes us to, or invites us to look into the greater benefits of deep learning and all that comes with recovering through grief, because it is such a huge interaction with deep learning. And yet there's so many that speak of the growth in their consciousness as a result. Number 14, how would you contribute or add to a world of many relationships, of ethics-based caring, of love, and a world of mutual benefit, and the singing of the song of life into collaborative belonging, or as Dr. Siegel describes it, as an interconnected whole. It is helpful to imagine what a world of this nature would look like, feel like, and be like. It is something we all deserve to witness. As so eloquently put into resonant and harmonic words by Dr. Siegel, he spoke of deep learning, evolution, and revolutions. Luckily, many around me, through diligent self-healing, are evolving into an integrated self-identity and belonging that honors differences in each other while promoting compassionate linkages and connections. Healing is happening. In closing, Stephen Hassan, PhD, states, from the moment we are born, we are constantly being influenced by all kinds of people, ideas, and forces. Some of this influence is healthy and promotes our ability to grow into independent, fulfilled, authentic adults. Other forms of influence instill dependency and obedience, at times even indoctrinating people to harm themselves and others. There is a wide spectrum of healthy and unhealthy influences. Today, a vast array of methods exist to deceive, manipulate, and indoctrinate people into closed systems of obedience and dependency. Per Dr. Hassan, communities are rapidly spreading around the globe like viruses, changing constantly, adapting easily to new cultures, destroying hundreds of thousands of lives each year by radically altering people's identities through mind control, brainwashing, hypnosis, and less subtle mind control techniques. What compels bright, energetic, and idealistic people of all ages to give up their individuality, their freedom of mind, and oftentimes their jobs, wealth, and families, to become a slave to a self-proclaimed master? As Dr. Hassan states, keep in mind that mind control does not erase a person's authentic self, but rather creates a dominant cult self that suppresses free will. The focus of control should be within your body and not with some external authority of any kind, person, or institution. As he shares, participation in society demands a good deal of giving up what we want, to follow society's rules and laws. However, conscience, conformity to one's own sense of right conduct, has a valuable role. It lets us know when we are being coerced to do something wrong or something we do not believe in. As so beautifully stated by Dr. Amy, efficiently addressing stored trauma in the body accelerates the trauma healing journey. Through curriculums, books written, and listening to podcasts, one can come to identify the best approach to regulate the brain inflammation of trauma, comprehend attachment theory, and apply the latest in neuroscience and epigenetics. The opportunities are opening worldwide, for all of us to be our most well-resourced selves. Thank you so much for all who listen to this podcast, for your courage and willingness to give compassionate attention to your personal journey for yourselves with recovering through grief. I am deeply grateful for the chance to bring forward such highly sensitive information to you today. Thank you so much for listening. Have a blessed day.